What's the difference between a matcha latte and a hojicha latte? On the surface, these two drinks are very similar, as they are both made from powdered green tea, but the flavor is completely different. In this video, we're going to compare the two lattes side by side and see the advantages and disadvantages of each. Let's get started. Okay, so what we have here is two different types of lattes. On the left, we have the classic matcha latte, and on the right, we have the hojicha latte, which we haven't talked a whole lot about yet. But we're really excited to start diving into the world of Hojicha lattes because we just recently launched a Hojicha powder. So this is made from powdered roasted tea leaves. So you take green tea leaves and then you roast them at a high heat so they take on this dark brown color. It really imparts kind of these warmer roasted flavors onto the tea. And then you'll actually powder that to create this lovely Hojicha powder. And as you know from matcha, once you have a tea in a powder, you can mix it into just about anything. So lattes is pretty obvious, but then you can also make hojicha cookies, hojicha cakes, hojicha desserts, all sorts of things like that, hojicha ice cream. But what we're going to talk about today is the hojicha latte. And we're going to compare it with the matcha latte that I'm sure you're all familiar with. We've talked about it a lot on this channel. So we're going to compare the flavors of the two different lattes. So on the left, I have the Matcha Seisui. So this is a Yabukita matcha from Kyoto. And this is coming from the Yabukita cultivar, which is the most popular tea cultivar used for Japanese green tea. And the reason it's so popular is because it has this kind of strong vegetal flavor to it, a little bit of that bold umami flavor that a lot of tea drinkers like. The one downside of this is that we find that most people, when they're drinking matcha plain, so our customers, they prefer oatmilk matcha, so the Matcha Washimine, for example. This one is a lot smoother. It has a lot more of this kind of round, full-bodied flavor, and it's much easier to drink it plain because there's less bitterness to it. It's also a lot harder to produce, so it's going to be a little bit more expensive. But when you're making a matcha latte, you actually want that strong vegetal flavor like you would get from the Yabukita matcha. So our latte grade matcha is a Yabukita matcha, but also some of our ceremonial grade matchas are Yabukita as well, and those work great in a latte. So if you're making a matcha latte at home, you might want to go for a Yabukita matcha. If you want to go fancy, you can do a ceremonial grade. But if you're just kind of doing your daily matcha latte, we recommend you go for the latte grade matcha. So let's go ahead and taste this one just to get a good baseline because we talk about matcha lattes all the time. It's very smooth. I'm using this type of oat milk that I've used in past videos. It has a very neutral flavor. That's why I like to use it for this. The tea kind of allows the flavor of the oat milk to kind of establish itself on the palate first. So it's very smooth, a little bit savory, a little bit kind of creamy, and then these vegetal flavors come in later into the finish. It's a really nice balance of flavor. If you've ever had green tea ice cream, it's kind of a similar flavor to this. It seems like it would be a total contrast, but because the matcha has such a strong flavor to it, you actually want to pair it with something neutral and a little bit sweet. So if you want to add sweetener to your matcha latte, that's a good option as well. But the flavors actually work quite well together because the oat milk kind of smooths out any of the bitterness that you might get, but it still leaves enough space for these kind of grassy or vegetal flavors to come through. So that's a very good latte, but let's try this one. The flavor is much richer overall. I did use a little bit more hojicha powder for this one. Normally I do 1 teaspoon of powder and a cup of oat milk. This I maybe used a little bit more, so it's a little bit stronger. But the flavor just works so well. It's the oat milk kind of smooths out, you know, the bitter flavors like we mentioned before, and it really leaves space for these kind of bold roasted flavors. So compared to this one, the flavors are much warmer. You get more of these roasted, almost smoky flavor profiles. You're getting some of that sweet chocolate in the finish. It's almost like, almost tastes like a hot chocolate actually. So definitely a good alternative that you can try. I originally said that this would probably be a better latte for the winter time, for the colder months, because hojicha is kind of seen as like a fall and winter tea. But actually it's quite warm out right now, and I'm enjoying both of these as a cold latte. So this is definitely a good option any time of year. either the Matcha Latte or the Hojicha Latte. They're both great. It's really a question of your preference. I think if you tend to like more sencha teas or gyokuro teas, you may prefer the Matcha Latte because it's more of these kind of grassy vegetal flavors. And if you like Hojicha, Genmaicha, maybe even Kukicha or Bancha, some of these warmer flavors, maybe the Hojicha Latte is right for you because it really kind of has more of these warmer roasted flavor characteristics. But this is definitely a good way to start enjoying these two teas. So if you find that a typical matcha, so like one made in a bowl in the ceremonial style, is just a little bit too much for your palate, this is a good way to start off into that tea. Likewise with the Hojicha, if that's just a little bit too much for you, a good way to delve into the world of Japanese green tea is to start with the lattes. So mix it together with some milk and sugar, and it's a good way to kind of get your palate used to these very unique flavors because I said this is pretty similar to hot chocolate, I would say, but the matcha latte is really going to taste unlike anything you've had before, unless you've had green tea ice cream or something like that. So I'm really looking forward to playing around more with this Hojicha powder in the future and kind of comparing it side by side with matcha, which is kind of its almost its unroasted counterpart, but there are some differences there. So for instance, matcha is shaded, it's made from younger leaves, the stems are taken out, whereas Hojicha, it's going to be made from older leaves, it's not going to be shaded, and there's going to be a lot of stems in there as well. And of course, it's going to be roasted. So there are a lot of similarities between these two drinks and a lot of differences. And I'm really looking forward to exploring these two further and making all sorts of Hojicha creations. Maybe a Hojicha ice cream down the road would be cool. So if you're curious about playing around with these recipes, definitely pick up some of this Hojicha powder. You can get it at a really good price on our website, neoteas.com. And you can start making your own lattes, and maybe you'll even like it more than the matcha latte. So thank you all so much for watching. If you have any questions about Hojicha or matcha, please feel free to leave a question in the comments below. If you'd like to support this channel, we'd really appreciate it if you could pick up some of the Hojicha powder as well as some of our matcha, and that would really help us out. Also, if you like the video, please hit the thumbs up button, please subscribe to our channel, and we'll have plenty more videos for you in the future. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.